Floyd Collins was a 37-year-old Kentucky caver who grew up roaming the limestone on Flint Ridge, across from Mammoth Cave. He'd already discovered the Great Crystal Cave on his family's farm and tried to run it as a show cave, but it sat back on Flint Ridge Road, too far from the busy Dixie Highway where tourists actually drove, so ticket sales were thin. In late January 1925, he turned to a small roadside hole locals called Sand Cave, hoping to open a new entrance right by the highway and finally make the cave pay. He immediately started working there, day by day, digging at the cave entrance deeper and deeper. On Friday, January 30th, 1925, it was snowing outside. He went in alone with a kerosene lamp, belly crawling through snowmelt and mud. He crawled his way to a small chamber locals called the turnaround room, named because most people stopped there, took one look ahead, and decided not to risk it. The only path forward was a slit in the rock nicknamed the Squeeze, about 8 or 9 inches high, tight enough that he had to exhale to flatten his chest, pin one arm to his side, push the lamp ahead with the other, and inch forward with his toes. Beyond the squeeze, the floor dropped out into a narrow pit about 10 feet. He eased down feet first, touched bottom, and found yet another pit ahead. He squatted, cleared loose stones and clay, and finally uncovered what looked like a way into the main cave, a real passage. He tied a rope, braced himself, and descended an 80-foot drop to a cavern floor. It was the kind of discovery that could turn a backroad hole into a show cave. But his lantern was starting to dim. Rather than be trapped in the dark, he turned to climb back out, first up the rope, reaching the squeeze, then backward through the squeeze, pushing the lantern on his shoulder. That's when it happened. The lantern slipped into a little pocket in the floor, cracked, and went dead. Now, in total darkness, Floyd kept feeling his way along the narrow, unstable tube, careful not to shake anything loose. But crawling the squeeze, careful sometimes isn't enough. He accidentally kicked a loose rock. That's when a loaf-sized stone, about 26 to 27 pounds, dropped and wedged across his left ankle as other rubble slumped around his hips. He was stuck in a letter slot of rock, torso twisted, ribs compressed, cold seep water pooling beneath him, with no way to sit, turn, or pry his foot free. The next morning at 9 a.m., 2 of the cave's owners arrived with their 17-year-old son, Jewel Estes. They saw Floyd's coat outside, called his name, and got no answer. They then decided to enter the cave to look for Floyd. The adults turned back when the passage narrowed, but Jewel kept going. He wriggled far enough to find Floyd alive. Floyd told him to bring his brothers. Soon, Marshall Collins, Floyd's brother, and Lee Collins, Floyd's father, were at the entrance, with a small crowd collecting on the hill. Marshall and a helper crawled in to widen the route, digging with knives and bare hands, trying not to bump the roof and send more stones down on Floyd. Around 4 p.m., Floyd's brother Homer arrived. Floyd had actually asked Homer to come caving that day. Homer had turned him down, and now he felt responsible. He forced himself in, reached Floyd, and started clearing rock around the trapped leg. Then a new problem. The crowd outside lit bonfires for warmth. The flames melted the snow and ice. All that water funneled into the cave and turned the clay to mud, sending freezing runoff toward Floyd. Homer stayed with his brother for hours, levering pebbles, scooping mud, whispering encouragement, until he was shaking with exhaustion and had to be hauled out for medical care. Homer also tried a rope under Floyd's chest, a gentle pull. Floyd cried out. He said it felt like he was being torn in two. They stopped. By Tuesday night, about 95 hours since he'd been stuck, a reporter named William Miller, who was only 5 feet tall and weighed roughly 117 pounds, volunteered to go in. He was small enough to squeeze where most rescuers couldn't, and as a reporter, he wanted a first-hand assessment. He strung a light near Floyd's face, chipped away more rubble, and managed to expose more of his legs, but the ankle remained locked by the rock across it. William talked with Floyd, fed him, prayed with him, then crawled out and wrote what he'd seen. His story spread, and so did the crowds. Hundreds became 1,000, and then more, encircling Sand Cave like a festival. All that foot traffic shook the hillside. No one realized how close the ceiling was to letting go. Around the 123-hour mark, the inevitable happened. A section of the tight access passage collapsed, sealing the only direct route to Floyd and cutting off food and water, so they changed plans. At roughly 144 hours trapped, crews started a rescue shaft straight down from the slope above, aiming to break into the passage beside Floyd's pocket. They dug day and night. The shaft crept deeper. At 1:30 a.m. on February 16, a miner finally broke through into the small side passage near Floyd. He crawled in, reached the pocket, and found the truth nobody wanted. Floyd was still there, still pinned, and already gone. Cold. Still, the doctors called it starvation, exhaustion, and hypothermia after too many days in wet, freezing air. From the signs, he had likely died days earlier, before the shaft arrived. They left him for a time. Extracting him through that slumping shaft risked more collapse and new casualties. Later, when it could be done more safely, Homer arranged to have Floyd's body brought out and given a proper burial.